But just because we were selling more houses, we didn't start going out and buying fancy cars or watches or vacations. We kept it humble, kept it quiet, and took that money and then just kept investing it and investing it and investing it. So I think that's one of the biggest things is everyone, I did a quick video about this a few months back, is like stay broke. Like just because you're crushing it and making great money, stay broke. So then you could take that money and put it into something that can create money forever.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grinzik. With me, as always, is John Cohen. How you doing?
We're good. I think we're on week 3 of stay at home. So it's been interesting. As you can see, we are still not in the same office as normal, but overall, I got no complaints. We're sort of hanging in there. We're seeing how this plays out.
Yeah, no, it's hard to believe it's been 3 weeks now. It doesn't feel like it for me.
It's crazy. I was talking about that the other day. I was watching the news at some point, and I'm not watching the news every day because it's only talking about one thing. But they were talking about like it's only been like 8 days, and I'm like, well, no, I've been home for 3 weeks. This was a week ago, so no, it's crazy. It's been 3 weeks, and I think we're there's really no end in sight for the immediate future. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of unknown. I think now I thought it was going to be over quicker. I think lockdown is going to be probably another 4 to 6 weeks. I was thinking it was only going to be 4 originally, and now I'm thinking it's going to be more.
Now I was talking to my wife the other day. I said, I could easily see like June. I think lockdown will end probably before that, but I could see like June when stuff starts. People starting to get back together. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it was not to get too much into this, but I was watching a video of an American expat over in China, and he was filming like what it's been like since they've been opening up. And he said it's still, even like a week or two afterwards, it's still like a ton of people are afraid of like the second wave and everything. So it's still not back to normal yet. So,
and that's why I think the businesses and real estate, I think it'll be disrupted because, who's going to be ready to jump on a plane? If they lifted the lockdown tomorrow, who's jumping on a plane? Who's going to a hotel? That stuff's going to take some serious time to get its shit back. But we'll see what happens.
No, for sure. It'll definitely be interesting. But with that being said, we've got a great guest on today. Just to quickly plug it, but he's going to be one of the speakers along with you and I, John, for an awesome event coming up soon. I don't even know what the date is. But I don't know if either of you know. I think it's
April 19th.
April 19th.
Sunday, April 19th.
Yes.
There you go.
Live streaming from our houses.
Exactly. It's going to be. It was originally going to be a live event, sold tickets, but 100% of proceeds going to LLS, Leukemia Lymphoma Society. Now it is 100% free. And if you feel like donating to the cause while you watch it, that would be spectacular. I think we have 8+ speakers from everything from multifamily to real estate agent to rental to flippers to tax liens to law. So there's going to be a ton of great speakers. It's going to be a one-day event. The website, if you want to go check it out, unless it changed, is lirealestaterevolution.com. And I believe that's where you can learn more about it. If for whatever reason that doesn't work, feel free to reach out to me, chris@torarep.com, or you can hit me up on Instagram @chris.grenzig, and I'll get you all the information. But our guest today is Bryan Karp. He's a real estate agent on Long Island, as well as a fellow real estate investor. He is a tremendous agent, tremendous person, tremendous investor. I think we're going to have a ton to learn from him. Both you as a listener and both, I think John and I are going to have some stuff to learn from him too. So it's going to be really interesting to get into it. But with that being said, Bryan, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. I'm excited.
Yeah. So can you take 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, however long you want to, just tell us who you are, your background, where you're from, how you got into this game, and kind of what you've been doing.
Sure. So I grew up in Belmore. I grew up in Nassau County. I was never the school person. I wasn't a bad kid in school, but I was the kid who would sit in science class. My knee would be jumping up and down, and I would stare right above the door. There would always be a clock, and that clock would be frozen. And the 45-minute science class felt like 4 hours. And today I wake up at 4 a.m. I go to bed at 9:30, 10 p.m. and the day goes like this. And I can't create enough time. So it's so funny how I was the kid who they had to push through the system of high school, and they actually convinced me to go to a BOCES. So basically what a BOCES is where you can learn a trade. So my old man, my father was an electrician, worked for Con Ed for 35 years. So he said to me, listen, Beej, if school's not for you, let's learn a trade. You'll always be able to feed your family. So what I did is I listened to him, and half of my high school career, I went to a BOCES, and that was the plan. The plan was to get out of high school, get into a union, do my 4 years, and then next thing you know, I'm making my 6-figure salary, and life is set. It turned out my senior year in high school, I got offered a full scholarship to play football in college.
Interesting.
So I was kind of at the crossroads because I had two different people on my shoulder. Mm-hmm. I had my father who said, listen, let's not kick the can down the road. Get out there, start hustling, and before you know it, you'll be at max pay. My mother, who is a big educator, college professor and huge into education, said, you cannot turn down school. You can't turn down college. And me being 17 years old and not really ready to start going out there to the workforce, I said, I get to play football. I get to postpone life for another 4 years. I'd be crazy not to. Mm-hmm. So I ended up going to Stony Brook University, which I had an incredible football career. I graduated as a 2-time All-American.
Oh, amazing.
Thank you. And then my senior year, I had my second knee surgery, and I realized I wasn't going to the NFL. Now it's 2005, top of the real estate market, and I got no clue what to do. And I say, oh my God, I should have listened to my father. And a buddy of mine on the football team gives me this book that changed my life forever. And the book was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Books by a guy, and I'm sure everyone in this podcast space has read this book 3,000 times over. But all the book talks about is real estate, entrepreneurship, and passive income. Mm-hmm. I read the book. I couldn't put it down. It was the first book I ever read cover to cover. And I ran out in 2005 and I bought a 2-family house. At that time, my wife today, Jessica, was just my girlfriend. So she was living upstairs, giving me $500 a month. And I rented out the entire downstairs for $2,000.
It's good. Keeping her honest.
Keeping her honest, exactly. My mortgage payment was $2,100 a month. So literally I'm 20 something years old and I'm doing the numbers. I'm like this, wait. I'm living here making $400 a month. And that's when I had the aha moment. And honestly, I got my real estate license 12 years ago for one reason. I wanted to be an inside player. I felt like the only way to understand real estate and get the best deals was to get my real estate license. And then I started the business as a part-time job. My first year, I sold 3 houses, friends and family. Then I sold 10. Then I sold 20. And then if you fast forward about a decade, I've been selling somewhere about 100 to 150 homes a year. And then in 2019, the business just exploded. And I did 205 transactions in 2019. I was the #1 real estate agent in Suffolk County. And now you guys are talking to me in 2020. That's it. That's a full, that's 37 years of my life.
There you go. I think there's a lot to unpack there and a lot of different ways we can go. But I think one thing that's stood out for me, and I think it's really apparent because I think it's interesting for me because John is, well, Bryan, how old are you right now?
I'm 37.
I thought so it was, but so John, you're what, 33?
I'll be 33 in a month.
And I think it's very interesting because I'm 28. So it's like a 5-year gap between all three of us. And all I kept thinking about the whole time was like, wow, I have so much time. Because I look at John and then I look at someone like you and I feel like we're almost in like the same space in life almost. Like I feel like I can relate to both of you very well, even though there's a 5 or 10 year gap. And I think that's very powerful where it's like, okay, I try to think back 10 years from where I was and I'm like, what was I doing 10 years ago when I was an 18-year-old kid, very similar to you. It was very funny where I had my mom pulling on one and my dad kind of a little more passive than, probably your father was. But my mom was big in education as well. She's got a couple masters and her PhD. So,
but you know what's so relevant about what you're saying is that you're how old? 28.
Mm-hmm.
So someone who's listening, who's 20, and
Yeah.
they look at you like, oh my God, like, how did he do this? All he accomplished. They look at me at 37, but just they all have to understand that I've been working my face off since I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm the overnight success at 37 years old with the biggest business in Suffolk County, this huge rental portfolio. But this is me hustling my face off, punting everything. No fancy cars, no fancy watches, no vacations. When I was in college, my friends are going to the Hamptons, dropping $300-400 a night, going out, and I'm going home and going to bed early and working 3 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing that, you look at your age and we look at all of our ages on how much time we put in to be where we are right now.
Right. No, I think I couldn't agree more. I think it's very important to say that as well. I think important though also that it wasn't 12 years of nothing. It was 12 years of growth. Whereas I'm sure when you hit year 6, you had a pretty relatively successful business as well. It wasn't, 12 years of nothing. And then overnight it hit, it was, compounding on top of each other.
No, absolutely. It was 3 houses, 10 houses,
exactly
20, 50, 100, 150, 150, 200, and it's 100%. And when you're in it, you don't even realize it. Like I just woke up one day and someone was like, Bryan, you sold 50 houses last year. They're like, you're like the top 1% of Long Island. I'm like, oh, that's great. And then you wake up 2 or 3 years later, Bryan, you sold over 100 houses. Is that even possible? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just working. And then you wake up and people are like, Bryan, you sold 200 houses. Like that doesn't even exist. I'm like, I know. How does it even happen? I don't even know 200 people. So
you must.
I must, right?
Yeah. So can you back up a little bit and break it down for us high level? I'm sure you could do days and days worth of talking about how you did do this besides just hard work and put your nose to the grindstone. Can you tell us a little bit more of things you learned, things you experienced, how you built the business up from, 3 to 200 transactions, et cetera, over 12 years?
Sure. I am a businessman running a real estate business.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those are the people who succeed in real estate business, women and businessmen. So I am hired by my clients as their advisor at a very high level. As you hire a high level accountant, you hire a high level attorney, high level financial, someone in the mortgage space. That's where people, I think, gravitate towards me. I'm also a salesman. I am choosing to sell real estate today because that's the commodity that I'm trading in. And if you look at 90% of the first generational millionaires, they were all made through real estate. So when I stepped back in my early 20s, I said, okay, I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. So I knew if I was going to create wealth, it was going to have to be in sales. And then I said, well, why am I going to go sell roofs or limousines? Why don't I just sell something I'm passionate about, real estate? And then how do I take those little piles of money and turn them into streams of income forever? And that's how we build generational wealth. So I've always had that mindset when I'm speaking to any of my clients, and I am full transparent. This is who you get, this over the top, aggressive, energetic guru who's obsessed with the real estate industry, real estate business. Like I'm the nerd who's up at 4 a.m, watching the numbers, watching what's going on. So I'm always selling from that point when I'm presenting to people who are thinking about hiring me, if that kind of makes any sense, a long around way of answering the question.
No, I think that makes a ton of sense. I think authenticity plays out over time. And I think people want, especially when you hear about people who get into being a real estate agent, it's always like, oh, if I sell one house a month for, $10,000 commission, I'll be making 6 figures. I hear that all the time, and everybody overplays how easy it is because it seems like, one a month is easy, like it's nothing to do. And I think people try to then hack it very quickly and you see a lot of new agents that come into, new markets and, just start getting their license. And it's like, they're, out of nowhere, they're all real estate all the time. That's all they want to talk about. And you can just feel that it's not that authentic person. While yes, they're trying to sell you something, it's also something that they are providing and are, true about. And I think that plays out over a long time. And it's interesting that it followed, that correlation in your path of, your transactions. And I think it's very apparent. And it's, for me, good to hear it as well, because it's always a reaffirmation of kind of what I believe as well. Was it really difficult in those first few years to not have the significant volume, or was it something you said like, hey, this is going to take, 3 years and I've just got to stick it out?
So the average real estate agent sells 5 to 7 homes a year.
Okay.
That's the average. And then they say top producing agents. Like if someone called me up from anywhere and said, Bryan, I'm doing 20, 30 transactions a year, I'm like this. You're a rock star. You are crushing it. And then you'll have a few white whales that are doing 50, 60 transactions. And when I say this, I'm not saying this huge, I'm not talking about an office. I'm not talking about a conglomerate team. I'm saying individual agents like myself. So when I started doing this, it almost happened by accident. It wasn't, when I got into this, it wasn't a full-time job for me because I still had bills. I still needed to pay, my mortgage.
What were you doing at the time?
So basically, if you fast forward, I ended up getting my real estate license and deciding this is going to be my side hustle because I'm a big proponent of, great, you want to get into real estate. And all the time people call me and say, Bryan, I want to become a real estate agent. I said, great. Or Bryan, I want to become a full-time real estate agent. I'm quitting my job. I'm burning the bridge. And sometimes that's necessary. But really the strategic way to do it is to build it as a side hustle and slowly build it big enough where it's bringing in more revenue than your day job. And then you can leave your day job. Like that's the real way to build out the real estate business. So what I did is when I ended up getting into this, I had bills to still pay. So what I ended up doing is I went back to my roots and I got a construction job, and I actually became a union construction worker. So I ran that road, and I ended up becoming a union construction worker. And I spent 9 years in the heat and frost insulation union. And basically what happened was I started building my real estate business during that time. So I was selling 3 houses a year. Next year was 10 houses. Well, I had a wife. We had a baby coming. I had a mortgage. I still needed to provide income for my household because real estate starts off very slowly. So basically what I did was I would wake up at 4 a.m. I would drive into Manhattan. I would probably start construction around 6 o'clock, 6:30. I would work my 7-hour day straight through. So I would skip lunch, skip coffee, and I would finish up around, I'd say around 1:30. And I would drive back out to Long Island. And then I would hustle real estate from 2 till when my eyes closed and I couldn't stay up another second. And the funny thing is on the job sites, you almost like you see people walking around with respirators today because of the climate we're in. I always had a respirator on because I dealt with fiberglass insulation. I'd have a bandana on. We'd have eye goggles. I'd have a hard hat. This is back in the day before they had these great earbuds and wireless stuff. So I would have my headphones wired through because on the job sites, big union construction sites, you weren't allowed to have that. And so for basically 9 years straight, you guys have to understand that I spent an hour driving in, an hour and a half driving out, and 6 hours working. So maybe 8 hours, 9 hours a day. And everyone thought that I was just sitting there listening to Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Beastie Boys. But I actually don't even have a radio in my car. All I was listening to was self-help books, real estate, finance, real estate development, anything I can get my hands on. And I literally think that I received a doctorate in those subjects over the 8 to 9 years that I was working union construction. And I started my business during that whole thing. And then I woke up one day and my wife's like, Bryan, you're selling 70, 80 homes a year part-time. So still doing the union construction gig. And 1 month, I made more money in real estate than I did all year in construction. But I still worked construction for 3 more years because I was afraid to leave for the benefits and the stability of the check. Mm-hmm. And then finally, 3 years after that, she was like, you're crazy. You're selling 100 homes a year or 80 homes at that time, and you're still working a construction job. And then I said, you know what, you're right. And I ended up leaving that. And then that's when the business just went to where it is today.
Gotcha. So I do want to talk about that transition, but John, I know also you were an agent in the city for a while, and then you moved over to the brokerage side on the commercial. And I'm curious to hear, some of your thoughts and your experiences and kind of compare and contrast with, what Bryan has been saying.
Yeah. So I was actually going to say, the thing that stands out to me was the obsession, right? To be the best at anything, if you're not obsessed with it and listening to, audiobooks every day. I mean, the other day I was like, I thought I didn't have to hear this person anymore. And it was a podcast. And so she's like, I thought we were done with them. But I did something. I went the opposite route when I got out of, I'm not, it's very similar. My mom thinks that, I walk on water. I can't do anything wrong. I played sports in college. And when I got out of college, she said, get a job or get out. So I did. But when I hated the job I was in and I was in finance, I quit cold turkey and said, I'm going to be a real estate investor. But then you realize, as you said, you make no money when you start. It doesn't work. Luckily for me, I didn't have a kid. I did not have a wife. I didn't have a mortgage. I lived at home. My mom made breakfast, lunch, and dinner, cooked every night, cleaned, wash, and made my bed every day. So I didn't have expenses.
I would love having breakfast every morning. I'm going to go to your mom's
breakfast. I didn't get every morning, but dinner every day. But so when I said I'm going to be an agent, I said I was going to be a real estate investor, and it didn't work the way the vision was. It was, okay, I'm just going to be this big investor. I agree. I said, so many people have generational wealth from real estate. I want to do that. But it didn't work. So I became an agent. When I became an agent, I got licensed, and then I just started, working open houses for other agents, just building a list of people, so on and so forth. I said, okay, this is too slow moving. Let's go into the city. I did rentals and sales. The first year there, I was like the number 1 or 2 or top 5 agent in the company, but they didn't have a commercial platform, and they had one guy in the back that did commercial leasing, and my vision in real estate was selling big buildings and making a lot of money. So I started interviewing and talking to people, and then I said, okay, if I want to do this, I can't do 58 rental transactions a year and 4 sales. It's just hustling is an understatement. I mean, I remember going from the Upper East Side down to Tribeca, and I'm, running down there and showing 3 apartments, and my cousin was at Pace. So I'm like, this is so wrong. It's so illegal, but Sal, go show these 4 apartments for me and just say you're me. And that's the only way it was able to you couldn't be in 6 places at once. So I transitioned over the commercial side. I went to interviews at every company, CBRE, JLL, Marks & Millichap. I interviewed at all of them. There was the companies that said, you can work on a team, you make $50,000 a year. 10 years later, you'll be a top agent. And I said, that's not for me. I want to do it on my own. So I took the job at Marks & Millichap, where it's basically eat what you kill. And the defining moment for me, and it was always this way, even when I played sports. And at my first job, I was like, okay, well, who's the top agent in here? And, they point to the kid in the corner office. And I was like, okay, well, he's in here at 5 and he stays till 10. So that means I have to come in at 4 and I have to stay till 11. And if he's making 100 calls, I'm going to make 400 calls. And whatever he did, I just wanted to do 4, 5, 6 times the effort, and realized very quickly that, wait a second, I got to split my commissions. I got a team. I got to split it with this guy. I got to pay this guy. I said, what am I doing? So through that period, I was investing in real estate. I owned some stuff on the side. I bought some tax deeds. I was messing around with it. But for me, it was like, wait a second, we just got $100,000 commission. I'm only walking away with $40,000 or $30,000. And I was like, I'm leaving so much money on the table. So I just started talking to my clients and the ones that we were selling the buildings for. And I was like, wow, this guy's got, he's got 26 buildings. He's collecting all these checks. I said, why don't I just take that work ethic and just go buy some buildings? So, but the obsession with being the best and the obsession with the real estate business, Bryan nailed it. If you want to be the best, you can't. That's how you have to work. Because I remember when I was doing an open house in Roslyn Heights, and it was $1.5 million house, brand new construction. The agent that I was doing it for was like, gotta take your shoes off when you walk in. So I'm in the place, I'm wearing a suit, I got no shoes on, I got socks on. And I was like Tom Cruise. I was like running and sliding on my socks because nobody was coming to the open house. I'm like, it's a Saturday. I'm like, this is brutal. Like, I'm sitting here for 2 hours. Not a single person came. I'm like, this isn't for me, because I could sit here all day, try and build clients, try and get listings. But for me, the defining factor was I just needed more action. And the hustle for me wasn't working open houses for people trying to build a list of buyers and calling past sellers, and for sale by owners. That was fun and I can do it. But it was the constant transactions and working with people in the city that really got that like juice flowing of, wow, this is really cool. I could do 50 transactions, 60 transactions. That's great. But I realized that, I had to get to the city every morning early. I had to, make the calls, go on the appointments. And if I didn't do it, I didn't make any money. So I said, that's why I switched over to the investment side 100%. Because now, money's invested in all our deals and you get a check every month. And like right now, we're not buying anything because of what's going on, but we still have tenants paying and you're still getting some money. So very similar paths. The biggest difference is I didn't have to support anybody but myself. So I was able to take the leap at 25 years old or 24 years old to say, all right, full-time investor, and I'll work, but I made my work more of a side hustle and my investing more of a predominant thing until the work took over. But when it took over, I said this, I don't want to do this. I don't want to work for anybody. I don't want to be tied down by transaction volume. Now, hindsight, if you have your own portfolio and you're doing transactions, that's fantastic. And I did feel like getting your license and understanding the business, being an agent gave you an inside edge over, an investor that didn't. I felt the same way, and that's why I went that route. But
and it's funny because literally I'm sitting here today as the number one dude because I wanted to be a real estate investor, and that was it. But I didn't have enough money to invest with. So I said, I have to start making some money in this business. And then I could reallocate it into really the end goal was to build generational wealth, passive income, and to build a legacy. So that the end goal for, I think, all three of us, and it seems like a lot of people that is going to be at this amazing event and teaching this amazing event on April 19th on Sunday. You like how I plugged it? Is that everyone, we all have the same goals. The same goals. It's just different paths and many different ways to get to that goal.
Exactly. And that's the key thing right there. It's just, real estate gives you a ton of ways to do it. You could buy multifamily, you could buy single family rentals, you could buy tax liens, you could buy notes. You can do it so many different ways. So if it's something that you're passionate about, but you're right, you need to sell things in order to have the money to buy things.
Unless you are gifted with this pile of money that was given to you. And my story doesn't have that. I remember my bank book. They had these little this is back in the day before online anything. And it was from EAB that doesn't even exist anymore. I think they were bought up by Citibank. And the little books like this. And you would see, see how much you had in the account. I had $400 in my account when I graduated from Stony Brook University. So, I had to, I knew that real estate was something that I was going to get into. And I said, but I need to start creating some piles of money before I could deploy them.
Correct. And that's so same thing. When I quit my job at Marcus & Millichap full-time, I said, okay, full-time investor. I had 2 years worth of living money in the bank. And that's when I said, okay, I could fuck this up brutally and make no money for 2 years. And then I could just go back to being an agent or being, going back to do something else. But that's the key thing, right? You can't, and there's people out there that sell, oh, you don't need any money. You don't need to do this. You do. You need to have something, because if you don't have a job and you don't have money, and you're, how are you going to go drive for dollars if you can't fill up your car with gas? Or how are you going to go get on a plane and go travel to a state if you want to invest there? So that's the distinguishing line. Is I tell people all the time, you can do it with no money, but you're probably not going to do it, because you need to have an income and you have to make money to deploy it into real estate. And if you do one transaction and you get a $10,000 check, invest it. If you do one transaction, you get $100,000, invest it. But you got to do multiple you got to sell something, or you got to work somewhere. You have to have an income. that allows you to take some of it and invest it. And the more, the more aggressive and the more obsessed you are with it, the more you're going to do, the more you're going to get, the more you're going to have to invest to then potentially, if it's your goal, to offset whatever income you have. And then you can live, passively with whatever your passive passion may be, whether it's rental income or, whatever it may be. So I think that that's where, the event is going to be really good to give people different ways to look at it. But in addition, there has to be that obsession. I think you define that perfectly, by working, a full-time construction job and a full-time real estate gig. But, real estate's difficult to do as a side hustle and be really, really good at it. You can do it, but you got to be obsessed with it. And you got to understand the tricks of the trade and the salesmanship, the listings, the clients. But you can't, one thing I tell people is, and I think you can't make somebody sell. And I think when you said you have to be a high level advisor, you could just give them all the facts and the reasons. But if they don't want to sell, you can't make someone sell their house, or you can't make someone buy the house. You could just say, here's the support, use me as a tool. I can tell you why it's a good idea or a bad idea, but you can't force someone into selling something or buying something. It just doesn't work.
I agree. What I think is really cool that I'm starting to see. So when I was a young kid and growing up my whole life, we never spoke about, and I lived, my parents, we were blue collar, working class, maybe a little bit above working class. So we never we didn't have anything extravagant, but, worrying about paying the mortgage was never something that we were concerned about. My dad was a super hard worker. My mother was as well. But my parents they lived in the projects in the city, and then they saved up their money. They bought a house in Midwood, East 29th Street. And then that area out of nowhere just blew up. And in 3 years, the house quadrupled in value. So they took that house and parlayed it and bought something in Belmore. And it's funny because growing up my whole life, I was obsessed with real estate, but I grew up knowing that home ownership was my God-given right. Like that was just like the first thing when I graduated from Stony Brook after reading the book, I was like, I'm going to go buy a house. Like that was the first thing. So to me, it's so cool today because I have two boys. My son Brody is 8 years old. My son Brock is 6, going to be 7 in about a week. It's so funny because now I am teaching them all of this. I am changing their mindset. So now my kids are growing up and they're growing up with the mindset that mommy and daddy buy houses for people to live in that creates income for to live our lives.
That's amazing.
The coolest thing about it is that my parents grew up in the projects. So they taught my generation, Bryan, home ownership is just God-given right. You're going to have a white picket fence. You're going to have your house. So me, that was right away. I'm going to teach my kids that, no, we don't just own a house. We own multiple houses. So since my boys were 3 and 4 where they could really talk and walk around, they're coming to the rental properties. They're dealing, they know the word cash flow. They know the word asset. They know the word liability, multifamily. Like it's so cool to watch them. And now they're starting to understand the whole situation. And we just bought a 2-family a few weeks back. And my son Brock is like, oh, this is great. So we're going to clean this up. And who's going to move into it? Like so it's amazing to watch that I'm going to change that generation and change their mindsets forever.
It's funny you say that because I joke around with my parents all the time, and they were the biggest supporter of me playing baseball, and they do whatever you want to do. But I joke around with them now. I'm like, why didn't you tell me to buy real estate? Why didn't you tell me to put my efforts there? Like you supported the baseball, and they joke around, and they say, oh, it's the most expensive baseball team you ever went to in college. I was like, well, I got a scholarship, so it wasn't the most expensive baseball team, but I joke around with them all the time, and I'm like, you guys, listen. I really like the support, but I'm not playing shortstop for the Yankees. So you should have taught me something else. And then maybe you don't even go to school. Maybe you do buy real estate or whatever it is. But I think that's awesome. I have a 1-year-old daughter, and I have all intentions that, the same thing, because I think it's really cool on not only your life and your future you can change, but by providing really good shelter for people, you're giving them something also. And I just think it's awesome to be able to have an 8-year-old that says, oh, this is really cool, we're going to fix this. And it's like they're already starting, and that's amazing.
And you see it's so young, so it's just going to be green. Like my dad was an athlete, so to me, athletics is just what we did. And just like with you in baseball, I'm sure there was someone showing you, but these kids are going to grow up in this, and it's just going to be second nature to them. And that's what I think is so cool about what we're able to do through real estate. And then what now at the level that we're at, because we're super blessed, is now when we do really nice things, we say, oh, we did that with our cash flow. So we didn't do that with daddy's earned income from his business. We just did that from our cash flow. And now they're like, oh, what do you mean? I said, yeah, you could spoil yourself from the cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's really interesting because both of my parents were they owned like one rental property when I was younger and then eventually sold it, but they were very much like live below your means. And for them, it was always just put money into the market and just save and go long term. And without them, not even to the same extent that you're doing of like explaining it and understanding and stuff like that, I was just surrounded by it so much. It's always just been super ordinary for me to just live below your means and not live like this crazy lavish lifestyle. Like my mom never bought a fancy car until, I was 18 or 20. So, she was much older, and, they just put money away and just saved and lived this crazy little lifestyle. And I never realized that it was so different from anybody else until, a few years ago or even several years ago, because for me, it was just normal. I just thought that's what everybody on our block did. And I didn't realize that my parents were significantly better off than most of the people on our block because they lived a lifestyle that allowed them to now, they both retired very early. Only, I know it was a different environment, but it was only one parent working at any one time. But a lot of people didn't live that. Like a lot of my neighbors had both parents working, or, they would not go on, as many vacations or trips or do as many things. And them doing that allowed us to do that. And I only realized it now years later as I've been learning more and stuff like that. But just because of that's how we lived, it was so ordinary. It's like, oh, okay. Like that's just who I am, and I get it. And it makes so much sense.
But you said it, you grew up in it.
Exactly.
And that's what they taught you. So it was just second nature. Mm-hmm. Like if you grew up and having dinner, everyone had dinner on Sunday. That was just how you grew up. So to me, if you could make the kids grow up in an environment of real estate and investing in real estate and managing money and finances properly, I can only imagine what's going to be the next generation for my families and your guys' families.
Yeah. And I think that was part of my point is, big props to you is I don't think I was even at the same level that you're doing with your kids. I don't think I was anywhere close because it wasn't like, hey, sit down and like, here's all the stuff we're spending on and stuff like that. And my parents did a little bit as I grew up. Like I would help them with like expenses and keeping track of things and credit cards and stuff like that. And, so they did a little bit, but it wasn't like I didn't know what, returns were or compounding interest or, if it was real estate cash flow or anything like that when I was 8, 10, 12 years old, or at least I don't remember knowing it. So, I think it's incredible for me to understand how I'm in a lot better place than a lot of people. And then to hear you adding on top of what I think I experienced, I think it's going to be incredibly interesting to see, how your kids develop in the future and kind of the springboard they're going to have off of. So I think it's amazing that you're doing that.
Thank you. I think something that you said that is really cool, because a big piece of why I think we are where we are today is we lived below our means for the longest time and still today do. So regardless if you're going to become a real estate agent like me or become investors like you guys, I think the key to make this all move quicker is when your income when you start to make more money, you shouldn't be raising your lifestyle. And I think that's one of the keys of how we were able to scale so quickly and build such a large rental portfolio, is because the real estate business was increasing. We were becoming better at it, better stewards of it, helping more people. But just because we were selling more houses, we didn't start going out and buying fancy cars or watches or vacations. We kept it humble, kept it quiet, and took that money and then just kept investing it. and investing it. So I think that's one of the biggest things is everyone, I did a quick video about this a few months back, is like stay broke. Like just because you're crushing it and making great money, stay broke. So then you could take that money and put it into something that can create money forever.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest problems, and I know if this was ever like a popular clip that everyone saw, I would get shit on, but a lot of people give landlords flack because they say the amount of rent people pay doesn't allow them to save up or, live the life they want and stuff like that. And my argument is, for some people, yes, there's a bottom and you can't go lower. And I empathize with that. But for most of the country, you don't have to pay the rent you're having. You just do the, 3 times your income, 3 times your rent to match your income. And that's the go rent you go get. It's the same thing with mortgage. If you're going to go buy a house, people go to the mortgage and they go, oh, you can afford $450,000 worth of a loan. And they take that full amount. And it's like, don't do that. If you can get $450,000 in a loan or $200,000 in a loan, or you can afford $1,500 in rent, don't go get that. Go do the $1,000 a month apartment. Go get $100,000 loan, because it's going to, one, allow you to be way more comfortable as you live. You're going to have a much greater cushion and more sense of security. And 2, you're going to be able to take that extra money and then go do other things with it. Whether it's you want to invest, or even if you want to just go on trips, or you want to visit family, or, however you want to do it. But people just leverage their living situation as high as they can because someone tells them they can. And they don't take the step back and think like, oh, I can go lower to do other things. And I think that's a big problem in the narrative of this country, of like how to get out of, bad situations of, not having enough money to save up. I think we need to take a stronger look at the individual sometimes than necessarily the way the system is set up.
Well, if anyone ever attacks you, I have your back.
I think there's a lot of people that would. The problem is there are many, many situations where it is almost impossible, if not impossible, for someone to reduce their expenses even more, because they're supporting family and relatives, and they're in the the bottom of the economic pole, or whatever you want to call it. So I do understand that, and that's not the person I'm talking about, because that I can't speak to. I haven't lived that. I can't talk about that, but I have lived the lifestyle of being able to afford a $1,500 a month rent and living in a $500 room in a 7-person home. I've lived that lifestyle, and that's what I did. So I understand how that works and living that lifestyle. And I know there's millions of people in this country that could be doing that, but don't understand the mechanics behind it and what it would lead to. And I think that narrative needs to change.
Well, a lot of people live for today.
Yeah.
Instead of living for tomorrow, and everything strategically, from my business to my personal life to my portfolio, has never been, any decision we make is never a 1-year decision. It's a 5-year decision. So whatever we look at and anything we do, we're looking 5 years out.
Yep.
So we have to sacrifice a lot and stay maybe in a more modest house or a more modest situation because we have a longer, long-term plan.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to backpedal a little bit towards your story and kind of try to extract some more value from people out of it. So if I'm understanding correctly, you don't have a team. It's just Bryan Karp doing this stuff. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's just Bryan Karp doing this stuff. I'm very laser focused on what I do in the real estate business. I don't claim to be the expert of every piece of real estate. I claim to be the guru of certain aspects of real estate.
Yes.
And
you go an inch wide and a mile deep.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you, because obviously hard work, whatever, but how do you stay on top of and, not let stuff fall through the cracks when you're doing 100 homes or 200 homes or 200 transactions or whatever it may be, while also, having 2 kids, having a wife, having a family life, looking after your investments, your rental properties, and, I'm sure other things, all while still, trying to live your life. Is there anything that you do that you've, put into your business, whether it's, systems or just whatever it may be, whatever comes to mind, that you've implemented over the several years that you think people would find helpful?
A few things. I think John said one of them. You got to be obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're not obsessed in this stuff, like it doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just totally obsessed with this. With me, I am super organized. I am super task oriented. I'm up at 4 a.m. in the morning. I'm a big thing, and there's a few guys and a few girls who've been preaching this for years, but I have these mini days. So what I mean by this is I wake up at 4 a.m. and I'll have a 6-7 hour day before everyone even wakes up.
I love that.
So I'll wake up at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. By 10 or 11 o'clock, I will have so much accomplished and be so organized and prepared for that day. When the real estate world wakes up and I'm getting hit left and right, I've already have so many things that have been accomplished and delegated. I'm obsessed with time. So I monetize every second of time. If I find myself having an extra 15, 20 minutes, I have exactly what I need to dive in to handle that. And my entire day is scheduled out. And I've only been able to have some extra time due to the current situation with Corona because the real estate market has severely almost shut down. Mm-hmm. That's why I was able to, when you shot me an email, Bryan, are you available to jump on the podcast? I jumped at the opportunity because I've always wanted to do this with you guys. And normally an hour podcast, I will come back to my phone with 18 text messages, 44 voicemails, and fire on every single situation.
Interesting. So how do you then, if you're busy all the time, how do you then look at all the things you have to do and then figure out your schedule? Like, how does that all happen? Because I think something I definitely struggle with, and I'm sure a lot of people struggle with, is like the organization and staying on task and like, not getting lazy and procrastinating and things like that.
Yeah. What I realized about myself, because I'm always doing self audits of myself, is I am obsessed with moving forward, and I'm obsessed with change, and I'm obsessed with bettering myself in every aspect of my life, every single day, week, month, year. So that's a big thing for me. But I think for everyone listening is you need to get up super, super early. And if you're not an early guy, then maybe, or an early woman, maybe you're staying up late. But there's nothing that's happening during my day that hasn't been pre-planned or pre-set up. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing with it. I don't walk into a Tuesday and have no idea what's happening. Like everything is time blocked, everything is set up. So I know what I'm walking into. And if you really look at a day, we all have the same hours. So it's just, how do you manage those hours? How do you squeeze out everything possible out of those hours to be as productive as possible? And everything. So I'll give you an example with my kids' sports. I coach their lacrosse, I coach their soccer, I coach their basketball. And how do I have time to do that? That is put into my calendar prior, and then other things are booked around it because that is a priority for me.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something that people in real estate don't do enough of. Like, I know even, I'm out of the office every day at a certain time because I want to eat dinner with my wife, my daughter, give my daughter a bath with my wife, put her to bed, and then she goes to bed at 7:30. And then I'm back downstairs doing what I got to do in my home office. So, but people realize, they don't time block personal time or that stuff right there. Because I think that right there, if someone took one thing away from the obsession, is if you can take your calendar and put your time blocks. And it could be, if you don't want to wake up at 4, that's fine. I happen to be an early person because I like having a lot of my day done by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock when people are waking up. But if you say, okay, I'm going to wake up at 9, that's fine. From 9 to 9:30, I'm going to do this. And then from 10:30 to this, I'm going to do that. If you do that and you just work through that and don't set that up the day of, set it up the day before, 2 days before, a week before, that will give you'll realize how much free time you free up by just making sure you're within your tranches or whatever it is. I think that is super important, and part of the reason why you're so successful at this stuff, because you make it a priority to get the schedule lined up. And if people don't follow a schedule, it's just, then you're just walking through the world like nothing's going on.
Right, exactly. And just and dealing with the fire and trying to be a firefighter and put it out, instead of having it all scheduled and handled prior. And then doing this so long, I almost have a crystal ball of what's going to happen in every transaction. So by doing that, I'm able to be prepared for every position that's going to happen, because there's nothing that I haven't walked through just in 1 year, but then times that by 12 years of doing volume at this level. So it's very much with systems and processes for every piece of the real estate scenario. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why a lot of sellers feel comfortable with me is it is not the first house Bryan Karp is selling. I've literally built this machine that we could run a property through and have the exact same outcome. So we're not reinventing the wheel. I have built a blueprint that will guarantee a property to sell. And we just have to run the property through the blueprint, and they have to feel comfortable and confident with me and what I can bring to the table to get them the outcome that I've done hundreds and thousands of times for all of my clients.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. Let me throw something at you. How do you then deal with, if everything's time blocked out and maybe you time block things out for, the random stuff, how do you deal with the 18 voicemails and the 45 text messages then that weren't planned?
Right. So, example, I had a Zoom meeting yesterday at 1:00. I didn't book my next thing until 3:00 because I knew the Zoom meeting was going to run from 1 to 2, and I wanted an hour to clean up everything. And then when I jumped off that meeting, it was right away, okay, what is on fire? Mm-hmm. Deal with that first. Then what is next level? What is next level, and what could be put off till later? And also, it is true, I don't have a team. 205 transactions, 2019. I negotiated every one of those transactions. I dealt with every one of my home sellers. I either dealt with the buyer direct or the other broker direct. But I do have a staff of admin and support staff that help me do this volume, keep all my clients super happy, and make sure the machine runs at a high level. So when things are coming in, I say, okay, who on my staff, this is in there, who on my staff could handle this, who could be delegated to this, so I could run through those 18 text messages in a matter of a few minutes and delegate them out, and then dive into the voicemails, dive into the emails, and attack it like that. But I love that. Like if I walked out of the meeting and the phone wasn't blown up like that, I think there was something wrong. Like I'm addicted to, as you said, John, you were addicted to the game of finding the next property. I'm addicted to the sales game. Like I love it. Like this is my hobby. I love this stuff. This is what, being an ex-athlete and I'm not very coordinated. So baseball is not a sport that I'm teaching my kids. Maybe you can come over and help. I want them to be able to throw a good ball. We are already hitting in lacrosse, and I'm teaching them how to check and stuff like that. But when I played college football and even football at the high school level, the biggest thrill and adrenaline rush, because I was a big defensive player, was ripping the guy in front of me out of the way and then chasing down the quarterback and crushing him. Like I could taste that. And then it even that high got even bigger when I was playing in front of 20,000 people, and you could put your hands up and feel like the energy. But that's the same energy and excitement I feel when I'm negotiating the transactions. I'm putting the deals together, and that's what I'm chasing.
Yep. Do you have 20,000 people at your closings?
I don't have 20,000 people at my closings. And today there's no one at the closings.
Yeah, that's even true. Just very quickly, because it is April 3rd. I'm not sure exactly what date, but we are in the midst of a crazy situation. Can you just touch very quickly on what's been going on in your world, how you've been combating the issues, how you're keeping your business afloat, and, things you're seeing in the future to, take away from this, to adjust going forward, just things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, this is definitely some uncharted territory for everybody. Mm-hmm. I have sold, even being a young man, I've sold houses after 9/11. I sold houses after Superstorm Sandy. So I've walked through a few different major situations. I've never in my life see the New York State Board of Realtors shut down real estate. They did, and what I mean by shut down real estate, and I had an Instagram post where I was like at the gates of heaven, and they were closed. Like I never thought I would ever see that in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But they did deem real estate essential. So they've opened it back up, but just with different restrictions on it. Listen, my phone has been ringing off the hook. Everyone's been texting me, messaging me, trying to get my perspective on what's going on. This is the adjustment that I have been preaching for a very long time that was coming. Mm-hmm. I don't want to, say, oh, look up any podcasts or interviews I did a year ago or 2 years ago, but I knew this was coming. I tried to advise all my clients. Everyone, you have to look at real estate markets, and they run in cycles, and generally they run in 10 to 12 year cycles. So I remember that your boy was on the street in 2008 when there was blood on the streets, and I was begging people to buy houses, and real estate runs in 10 to 12 year cycles. So we had our move up, mm-hmm. and it's cycling down. Now, did any of us think that it was going to go and just stop automatically? No. And it's going to be more severe now because it's not just the economy. This is a worldwide pandemic. So I knew it was coming because I saw the numbers in my markets move too quickly, too fast. So even before this was happening, I was sitting at kitchen tables in 18 and 19, early 20, and I was saying to my homeowners, get out. If you need to sell in the next 3 years, and I started this in like 17 and 18, I said, get it on the market, get it priced properly, and let me move it for you. I'm proud to say that I had about 12 to 15 clients in 2019 who were not scheduled to retire for another 2 or 3 years that I convinced to sell their home and jump into a rental property. Because I said that you needed to take your money off the table, mm-hmm. because most people's wealth is surrounded behind the equity in their property. Yep. My parents' generation, I'm sure, you guys mm-hmm. as well. That's where all their wealth is. And there was a huge position that a lot of my clients, like when I sat down with them, I was the advisor. I'm like, oh my God, you're blessed. You own the house outright, or you got a $50,000 equity line of credit. But I'm like, this is a scary position to have out there in the market when the guru doesn't feel that this is going to keep going up and up and up. Healthy markets, they move slowly, 3%, 2%, flat, not these 10% gains. And in the Long Island market, and I was seeing these tremendous gains, and it didn't feel healthy mm-hmm. for a very long time. And I was saying it to everybody. So where are we going to walk out when this is all said and done? I do think the low end to middle end of markets will be just fine. Okay? Because there is such a huge first-time buyer pool mm-hmm. who was waiting in the wings and fighting for all the entry-level stuff. So early, and this is you're talking to the guy I'm the soldier on the ground with the gun walking through the desert. Yeah. So no one sees a market like, if you're reading the newspaper, it's old news. If you're hearing it from your friend at the bar or at Starbucks, it's hearsay. But coming out of my mouth is really what's happening. Mm-hmm. So right before the market got shut down, there was a lot of young buyers jumping at those first-time home buyer homes. And when someone's going to say, they're listening to say, well, what price point? I can't tell you the price point because every market and town is slightly different. Yep. But the entry level could not produce enough of those houses to sell. Now, the people who were fighting over those houses were two different groups: first-time home buyers and also people downsizing, because I saw a large group who says, Bryan, I just don't need these taxes of this level. Let me come down to it.
Yep.
Then I saw the mid-level there also wasn't really enough good mid-level inventory. And what I mean by that, it was stuff that was the next price bracket, but was in great shape, fixed up, A locations. And those were the people who were selling the smaller ones and moving up. So I think once this, and one of you guys said, this is when we first started the podcast, was, well, it's going to take a little while for the consumers to feel confident again. And I agree with that. What's going to happen first is the entry levels are going to start to get cooked up, because people don't want to just be throwing away money for rent forever. They want to build equity. They want to have tax write-offs. And then those people are going to push the mid-level. So your entry and mid-level, I think, will be just fine, give or take. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to have an adjustment, but give or take, those will be fine.
Sure.
The high end was already soft.
Yeah.
So that's going to also get hurt even more. What's going to get really, really hurt will be your secondary properties. So what I mean by that is a lot of the inventory out East Long Island, or areas that are vacation areas, mm-hmm. because now that people's portfolio have gone down substantially and they don't have as much liquid money in savings, they're going to be less to go drop 7 figures on that beautiful condo on the water. That's going to get hurt. And then I'm the residential guru. I am not the commercial, but I also am just going to throw it out there. I think certain aspects of commercial are going to get destroyed in 2021.
For sure. Like self-storage, office space, that's with everybody working from home and working virtually, like if you're a landlord paying if you're an office owner, not of a building, a leasee, like if you're leasing an office building and you have 15, 20 employees and you realize that everyone can work super efficiently from home, why pay the rent, right? Yeah. So like self-storage, if people lose 6.6 million job claims, are you going to pay your self-storage bill? No, it's just not. It's just not going to happen. So there is some commercial spaces that are going to be, mangled. Even the restaurant industry, the bar industry, those, if there was 10 restaurants, 8 of them are going out of business. Yeah. And then 2 of them are going to pick up so much business because the other 8 are out. But the owners of those buildings are going to lose tenant. This could have massive impact to the commercial space. I think housing is always, people pay their food and they pay their shelter. They need that. That's an absolute necessity to live. So you always have
a roof over their head.
You have insulation, but I mean, I read an article today about restaurants, and it's scary to think all these people could lose their jobs, and the waitresses and now it will come back. And I don't think it's going to be 8 years before it comes back. I think it'll be, 6 to 12 months, and then it'll start, normalizing again. But when people realize that there's efficiencies in working from home and virtually and stuff like that, I mean, fuck. Those product classes are shot.
Well, there was the one article, it was talking about like the rise of working from home, even from like, I think it was 2005 to like, it might've been 2015. I'm going to butcher the years, but whatever. It wasn't like, it was long ago to recent. And it went from like literally no one to like 2 or 3% of the population. And now I can't even imagine how much it's going to spike over the next 2 to 4 years. I mean, me personally, I would always prefer to still go into an office, because that just mindset of like getting up, getting changed and leaving is a big thing. I know like other people say you can do the same thing, go to another part of your house. I've just always known that isn't it for me. And even doing it now, it's still somewhat of a struggle for me to be like, hey, sit down, get changed, sit down and, kind of do it. That always, like, that transition of going somewhere has always been important for me. But I think there's going to be a huge spike, and it's going to affect the office space tremendously. I'm sure a ton of people are going to sell their stuff in storage to afford different things. So self-storage is going to go down over the next 3 months, right? If you've got antiques in your self-storage, you're going to list those things on eBay tomorrow. If you have any sort of, wherewithal, lose rent and make money. So I think those 2 places are going to get absolutely smoked.
I think it's going to teach everyone to be more conservative.
Yes.
I think it's like the wake up call. And that's how I've always lived my life, and my business was super, super conservative. So I think it's just the wake up call that everybody needed. that we can't, just because you could afford the monthly payment doesn't mean you should buy it. And I think that anyone who's going to be moving up to a super high-end house will think twice and make sure that their business or their job is stable, because everybody, and this is something that we've never seen before in any space, was why I was pushed to get a union construction job, or why I was pushed to get a job, was because certain industries or certain areas were recession proof and guaranteed, but they just closed down construction. Union construction is closed down right now. The car business is closed down. Restaurants closed down. So certain people who decided not to be an entrepreneur and wanted to be a W-2 employee, which I respect that, because they want the comfort of knowing that income's always going to come in, they're going to be shocked, because now it's not always guaranteed.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the way I've been describing this is like, we've started the 12-round fight and you just got knocked down in the first 30 seconds of round one. Mm-hmm. You're either going to lay down and New York unemployment, I think I read this somewhere and I don't know who posted it. New York unemployment, the weekly benefit was $540. Now it's $600. So those people are actually going to do better than they originally thought. But $600 a week is, you got to make drastic changes, but it goes back to, not going above your means, right? Just because you got $100,000 check doesn't mean you go spend $99,000, because you're going to be the one that when this happens, you're going to be the first one to wave the white flag. You're not even going to try and get back up. So I think living below your means, and this is that the punch to the gut that I think refocuses and reshifts people's mindset, economy, everything. I do agree. We've been looking for, a second house or a vacation house. We have a small little house and we love it, but I'm the happiest person in the world right now. Cause I'm like, well, where I want to have a nice place, the prices are going to come down 30%. Yeah. So it's like, okay, now is a very good opportunity, because if you reset the market, maybe it's 2 years before you come out of this completely, or 3, but then you're going to go right back into that great, uptail market, and you're going to be in a much better place if you can afford it. So I think there's opportunities. There'll always be opportunities, but this is the resetting that, was needed. It really was, because things were going crazy for way too long. And now, it's back to, it's a level playing field.
Yeah. Cause I think we had so many years of the economy just printing money and positive. So I'm not happy that the prices of homes are going to have to reset, but you're 100% right. It was something that was due.
Yeah. I do think it was interesting though, when you were talking about the low and middle tier and first time home buyers. One of my best friends got engaged recently. He's getting married later this year. And he's like, we're thinking about buying a house in December for months. And then as soon as this stuff started happening, he called me and he's like, what do you think we should do? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know the residential market in Long Island, but I was like, good chance there's going to be some sort of a reset. I said, your problem is going to be, there's going to be a lot of demand for lower end priced homes. And I don't know where you guys are going to be looking. So I said, do I think it's going to hurt a little bit? Yeah. I think you may be able to get it cheaper than what you would have gotten it 3 months ago. I don't know that it's going to be a 30% discount to what it was. So I said, is it good for you guys? Cause you were thinking about buying. I said, yes. I said, but I wouldn't try to hold out for this crazy steal. Cause I don't think that for the space you guys are going to be in, I don't think that's happening. I don't think you're buying a $600,000 home for $400,000.
If you want to give him the advice, the first people out to the market will get the best deals, because the home sellers are going to be a little concerned and saying, wow, is this really going to affect the price? Mm-hmm. So I think he'll get the best. I don't think he's going to steal anything, but I think he'll get the best discount immediately, because, as my mentor, not that I've ever spoken to him, he knows who I am. Warren Buffett says, be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. So I think the first players to that market will grab, this is only entry level, will be able to grab some of the good entry level stuff, because that seller says, you know what, I better just take this deal and move forward with it. But once everyone feels comfortable, all of those young buyers are going to come back out. You always need housing in Long Island, affordable, good price point housing with fair taxes. So I think that that's going to continue to move. So I think if he's going to do it, once this sets, and you could, he should get out there and grab something, because that's when he's going to get his best discount.
The one thing I did bring up to him that, and not to prolong this, but that I thought might be interesting is we've obviously seen a lot of people move away from New York for, high taxes, high cost of living, blah, 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 blah. I'm curious how, with New York being probably the hardest hit, at least so far, how that's going to change people's mindset of staying here. Is that going to be like the incentive for a lot of people to be like, oh, I know, my cousin Lisa and, my best friend Bob, they've all moved away and they're in these massive homes and they've got super low taxes and blah, 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 blah. Is this going to be like the tipping point for a lot of people that it's like, hey, New York's just not for us. Like this, we just got crushed. We were the center of this pandemic in the United States. I don't want to be here anymore. And how is that going to, how big of a shift is that going to be? And how is that going to play into the markets? And who knows, right? But that was just something I brought up to him that I think will be interesting as well.
It is going to be interesting.
I'm sorry, go.
No, I was going to say it's going to be interesting because who hasn't had the conversation? I mean, I live in Nassau County, so, it's not, the city's disaster, right? There's 8 million people in no space. So inevitably it's going to be worse, but it's, I've found myself on real estate websites looking in, Montana and just playing around. Not that it's not even an option. I'm not going anywhere, right? We're the people that have Sunday dinner every day. Like my mom called me yesterday. She's like, oh, I missed a baby. I haven't seen her. Like, you're not coming over on Saturdays and Sundays. So like, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm at least like going through the motions of going online and looking at stuff.
Can I get an invite to that Sunday dinner?
Open invite.
Okay. No, I think that, I've been tracking probably about, for the last 5 years, a third of the homes that I sell, the clients left Long Island.
Interesting.
And they were not all retirees. Mm-hmm. They were also our generation and the younger generation just saying Long Island is too expensive, because I would sit at a kitchen table with a teacher and maybe a Suffolk County police officer or a police officer. They're bringing in $200,000 a year.
Yeah. And
they were just getting by. And they both were working all the time, and the kids were in daycare. So I have seen that, but I believe so much in this Long Island economy and this Long Island real estate. I think there will always be buyers for it. And same thing like you, John, my family's here. My wife's family is here. We're regardless of how expensive it gets, we're just going to out earn it and out hustle it so we can live the life that we want here in sunny Long Island.
Awesome. I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Bryan, thank you so much for coming on. I think you gave a ton of insight, knowledge, experiences, stuff like that. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, maybe buy or sell a house with you, where can they do that?
Sure. You could find me on Instagram, which would be Bryan Karp, LI. Mm-hmm. You can also find me on YouTube, which is Bryan Karp, LI. Remember, Bryan is with a Y. If you need to email me, absolutely. My website is soldbybryan.com. And my email address is brian@soldbybryan.com. Or just throw me into Google, Bryan Karp, and I'm sure my handsome, bold face will pop up.
Awesome. We will be sure to drop all that in the show notes. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you haven't subscribed already to the podcast, please do so. If you are subscribed, please send it to somebody you think would get a ton of knowledge from this, especially for this episode if you're from the New York, Long Island area. Bryan, once again, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.